Good evening. We begin tonight with breaking developments in the escalating tensions between two of North America's closest allies. In a move that has sent shockwaves through global markets, the former U.S. President abruptly announced the suspension of trade negotiations with Canada, a decision that has left officials in Ottawa both frustrated and determined to defend national interests. The unexpected announcement came during a press briefing in Washington, where the American leader cited what he called unfair treatment in trade policies, alleging that Canada had been taking advantage of the United States for decades. The statement, delivered without prior notice or consultation, immediately disrupted months of intense negotiation aimed at modernizing cross-border trade agreements. Within hours, the Canadian Prime Minister stepped before reporters in Ottawa, responding to the sudden halt with a measured yet firm tone. He began by acknowledging the significance of the trade relationship between the two nations, emphasizing that both countries had long benefited from cooperation rooted in mutual respect and economic interdependence. He reminded the press that the two economies are deeply intertwined, with millions of jobs depending on the steady flow of goods, services, and investments across the world's longest undefended border. We remain committed to fair and balanced trade that works for both sides, he said, adding that Canada would not be intimidated by threats or abrupt changes in tone. As questions poured in, the Prime Minister maintained composure, careful to project steadiness in the face of sudden volatility. When asked whether Canada would retaliate with new tariffs or restrictions, he stated that his government was exploring all options but would continue to seek dialogue and diplomacy. He described the move by the U.S. administration as disappointing and counterproductive, noting that abrupt disruptions harm not just Canada's exporters and workers, but also American industries reliant on cross-border supply chains. He highlighted that agriculture, manufacturing, and technology sectors in both countries depend heavily on the stability of their shared trade framework. Analysts observing the Prime Minister's tone described his response as a blend of resolve and restraint. Rather than fueling confrontation, he underscored the importance of maintaining open communication, even when faced with aggressive policy decisions. His comments were seen as an effort to reassure both domestic audiences and international markets that Canada remains a reliable and stable trade partner. Behind the scenes, officials confirmed that the Prime Minister had convened an emergency meeting with top cabinet ministers and trade advisors to assess immediate economic impacts and to prepare potential contingency plans. The sudden halt to negotiations is especially striking given how close both sides appeared to be to reaching a preliminary framework. Sources close to the talks revealed that negotiators had been ironing out differences over dairy market access, automotive manufacturing standards, and digital trade regulations. Just a week earlier, optimism had been growing that a deal could soon be finalized, signaling a breakthrough after months of tense exchanges. But all that momentum was lost in a matter of minutes, when the former U.S. president's announcement effectively froze discussions indefinitely. In his address, the Prime Minister carefully avoided personal attacks, choosing instead to focus on principles of fairness, cooperation, and long-term economic stability. He reaffirmed Canada's belief in multilateralism and international trade rules, stressing that his government would continue to work closely with other global partners to uphold predictable and rules-based commerce. He reminded reporters that Canada has weathered trade challenges before and has always emerged stronger by standing up for its workers and industries. "We will always defend the interests of Canadians," he stated, his tone calm yet unmistakably resolute. The announcement triggered swift reactions from business leaders and economists across the country. The Canadian Chamber of Commerce released a statement warning that the decision could disrupt key industries, from automotive parts suppliers in Ontario to grain exporters in the prairies. Several CEOs publicly urged the government to remain patient but proactive, calling for diversification of markets beyond the U.S. to reduce dependency. Financial analysts noted a brief dip in the Canadian dollar following the U.S. announcement, though it stabilized after the Prime Minister's press conference reassured investors of Canada's continued commitment to trade stability. Meanwhile, trade experts pointed out that the timing of the U.S. decision appeared politically motivated. With elections approaching in the United States, many observers see the move as an attempt to appeal to domestic audiences with a hardline stance on trade. Canadian officials, however, have signaled that they will not be drawn into political theater, insisting that their focus remains on protecting economic interests through pragmatic and professional engagement. In Parliament, opposition members questioned the government's preparedness for such abrupt shifts, pressing for details on how Canada intends to safeguard industries most exposed to U.S. markets. The Prime Minister responded by reiterating that contingency plans were in place and that his administration had anticipated various outcomes throughout the negotiation process. He also emphasized the importance of unity during times of uncertainty, urging Canadians to avoid divisive rhetoric and to trust in the country's economic resilience. The Prime Minister's response drew mixed reactions from political commentators. Some praised his steady approach, describing it as a necessary counterbalance to unpredictability from Washington. Others argued that Canada should adopt a tougher stance to demonstrate strength in the face of what they called economic bullying. Despite the differing opinions, most agreed that his remarks were carefully calibrated to protect Canada's reputation as a mature and measured partner in global trade. Internationally, the situation has drawn attention from key allies in Europe and Asia. Several leaders expressed concern over the potential ripple effects on global markets, given that both the US and Canada play critical roles in the North American and international trading systems. Economic advisors in Brussels and Tokyo reportedly reached out to Canadian officials to discuss alternative trade avenues and potential new partnerships. In the hours following his address, the Prime Minister also placed calls to several provincial premiers to brief them on developments and to coordinate responses across regions most affected by the trade freeze. According to insiders, his message to them was consistent: maintain calm, focus on long-term strategy, and prepare to adapt swiftly to new trade dynamics. Government agencies were instructed to provide support to exporters and small businesses who might face immediate disruptions in supply chains or market access. As the day progressed, the story dominated headlines across North America. Television networks replayed clips of the Prime Minister's composed reaction alongside footage of the U.S. President's abrupt announcement. Commentators noted the stark contrast in tone, one marked by confrontation, the other by caution and steadiness. Economists warned that prolonged uncertainty could stall investment decisions and strain industries that depend heavily on predictable trade flows. Despite the volatility, officials in Ottawa insist that Canada remains open to dialogue whenever Washington is ready to resume constructive engagement. For now, the message from the Prime Minister's office is one of patience and principle. Canada will continue to champion fair trade, defend its national interests, and seek solutions that serve workers and businesses on both sides of the border. The underlying sentiment throughout his remarks was clear. While the decision from Washington may have disrupted negotiations, it has not shaken Canada's confidence in its ability to navigate the challenges ahead.